here! After 5 years of anticipation and hype, the sequel to 2014's Godzilla has arrived in the form of Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and the hype has been through the gosh darn roof. Fans the world over have been excited for this movie ever since we got the first looks featuring the iconic shot of Godzilla shooting his atomic breath into the sky, and since that day, the hype has never slowed down. With trailers showcasing beautifully rendered monster action, design updates of all four of the Titans, and a director at the helm who clearly understands this character and what he represents. By the time May 31st rolled around, fans the world over were singing their praises towards Warner Brothers and Legendary for creating a new religious symbol for which they can enjoy forever and ever. I was one of these fans who went and saw this movie, and let me tell you something right here, right now. This movie right here, without a shadow of a doubt, is perfectly good. Godzilla King of the Monsters is a fun and entertaining entry into the Godzilla series. It ain't perfect, but it gets its job done for what it's trying to be. A summer blockbuster starring Godzilla and some of his most iconic monster co-stars, Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah. It easily blows its American predecessor out of the water with its atomic blasts, and while it's certainly not the peak of the series, it definitely has great things about it. For example, the special effects are top-notch. Each monster looks fantastic, and their movements feel really smooth and realistic, especially when the Titans take flight. There wasn't a single time where I thought the movements of each creature were off or didn't feel realistic. Every fight scene is also extremely well done. Each monster can be seen crystal clear even in the stormiest of conditions. Each monster also has a distinct fighting style, whether it be Godzilla's physicality, Ghidorah's snake-like movements, or Rodan and Mothra sticking to aerial dogfights. The cinematography in this movie is also very well done, whether it be shots like Ghidorah's call, the call to arms, Goodbye Old Friend, the awakening of Rodan, or the birth of Imiko Mothra. The soundtrack is done by Bear McCreary, who before this movie I've never heard a single soundtrack from. I know he did the soundtracks for series like Battlestar Galactica, God of War, but I've never heard any of his work prior to this, so this was really the first time I ever experienced this score. And I'll say that it's different than what I expected it to be. I think that ever since the announcement back at Comic-Con, which states that classic Ifukube Godzilla cues are being brought back into this movie, most fans were looking forward to a film with a majority Ifukube-filled soundtrack, myself included. So naturally, listening through it for the first time, I admit that I was disappointed, and now I still kind of am. Most of the tracks did feel kind of generic and not very memorable. They feel very modern action movie, and they don't really stand up alongside much of the 2010's Godzilla soundtracks. But I will say that some of them are really good. Old Rivals is a great action fight bit between Godzilla and Ghidorah. Goodbye Old Friend is a beautiful and somber song and a great send-off for Dr. Serizawa. And Battle in Boston and King of the Monsters are epic and wonderful. And while these tracks aren't Ifukube based, I can definitely tell that there are some influences from other Godzilla scores. The two that strike me the most are how King of the Monsters takes heavy inspiration from Godzilla 2014's Back to the Ocean, how Takiti Coexistence and Goodbye Old Friend shared the Mephis motif from the Godzilla anime trilogy, which was a big shocker to me. There are probably 1,001 other cues that I haven't picked up on or talked about, but trust me, we'd be here all day if we kept going through them all. So, the soundtrack for the most part is pretty okay. Nothing spectacular, but nothing terrible either. However, I will say, the themes for all four of the main Titans are pretty great. Godzilla's theme is back and better than ever. Never has the classic march sounded this powerful and triumphant. Same goes for Mothra. Her classic 1961 theme is brought back, and once again, it's very powerful, and easily my favorite out of all the themes in this movie. The themes for Rodan and Ghidorah were ones I needed warming up to, but now I think they're pretty good. Rodan's theme has the sense of energy that makes the fire demon a true force to be reckoned with, and now seeing the movie I can confidently say that it fits this character. And for Ghidorah, he's my least favorite. His theme is fine, if not for being a bit generic, aside from the Mongolian throat singing at the beginning, which is pretty awesome, which thankfully is used as his main motif during the movie. And on the topic of each monster, they're friggin' awesome. Starting off with the title boy, Godzilla is awesome in this movie. I wasn't exactly the biggest fan of Godzilla in 2014, more on that in this video, so I was hoping that Godzilla would have an absolute overhaul of character development in this movie to make him really something special. And what I got was unexpected, but I'm all for it. So how did King of the Monsters make Godzilla better? Answer, they made him angry. Godzilla went from whatever he was in 2014 to, I am so done with everyone and everything, can I kill this son of a please? Persona, and it's awesome. All this man wants to do is kill King Ghidorah and nothing else. It doesn't matter to him what gets in his way, he just wants to clap this three-headed clown. But at least by the end he's pretty chill, cracking open a gold one with the boys. Something else that really helps out the monsters is that they're all portrayed by motion capture actors, allowing the expressions of the human actors' performances to show within the monsters. This is done with Ghidorah, Rodan, and Godzilla. And while I think Ghidorah benefited the most from this, which I'll talk about more in his section, Godzilla also fares well from it. Every single shot of Godzilla in this film is one of him being rather peeved, which sells the personality even more. Long story short, Angry Godzilla is best Godzilla. Up next we have the clown who Godzilla wants to clap, King Ghidorah. He's light. He's on the lower half of my 4 favorites, not because he was bad or anything, but because he was exactly what I expected him to be. Ghidorah is big, intimidating, and is a constant threat throughout the film. Kinda. Throughout most of the movie, he is constantly getting clapped, or at least is fairly matched with Godzilla. But by the end, he's out here pulling 7-page-long mudas against Godzilla, literally lifting him into the atmosphere, dropping him, which is what the fireball in the trailer was by the way, and even through all of that, he still tries to kill Godzilla. Though I guess the more impressive thing is how Godzilla survives. I mean, if I were Ghidorah, I'd probably be like, well, I did drop this man from an unsolicited height in the atmosphere, and that impact was so epic there doesn't even need to be a second or third one. So, might as well grab a greenish gray one with the boys and celebrate a job well done. What I'm getting at is that Ghidorah is stupid powerful with no sense of progression. And the only way Ghidorah is stopped is when Godzilla absorbs all of Mothra's hormone and blows up this son of a with a sunlight yellow overdrive. And then Godzilla cracks open a gold one with the boys. So yeah, Ghidorah could have been handled better. I'll talk about one way later, but I will say Ghidorah had a pretty awesome personality. Ghidorah is once again portrayed by motion capture actors. And with that, personality is brought in with each head having its own unique character. The middle head is large and in charge, the right one is much more aggressive and ready to sink his teeth into anything, and the left one is curious and now an internet meme. Each head was even given a distinct name during production, the middle head being Itchy, the right head being Ni, and the left head being San, or more commonly known as Kevin. But those names are stupid, so let me suggest some. The right head is now Wamu, the left head is now AC/DC, and the middle head is Cars, and together they form Ghidorah, the three-headed Pillar Man. Speaking of the Pillar Men, and JoJo references, the next monster is found in Mexico, along with tequila and actually decent Nazis. Rodan. Let's all be real here, Rodan is the MVP of this movie. Rodan is the monster that benefits the most from his CGI upgrade. Before, Rodan was always a stiff puppet moving across a set. The fear brought on him wasn't his presence, but rather the destruction he causes. But now, with him being a CGI model, Rodan can fly around and be a lot more flexible. He can take to the skies and actually be menacing. Rodan is now extremely mobile and can perform flying maneuvers that classic Rodan can only dream of. The standout, of course, being the barrel roll. Rodan being this unbelievably fast also makes him the most fun of the titans we see in the movie, aside from Godzilla of course. And just like Godzilla, Rodan is an anger ball and a super aggressive creature. This man fights anything that moves, the Air Force, Ghidorah, Mothra, whatever. I will say though, he is kind of a okay, I'm stopping that gag. Once Rodan ultimately loses to Ghidorah, he spends the rest of the movie being his servant, helping him out and dealing with Mothra during the battle in Boston. I would have much preferred to see a Rodan who is not wanting to play by the rules and just go against Ghidorah and fight whoever looks at him funny. But aside from that, Rodan is a hell of a lot of fun to watch on screen and is probably my new favorite version of the character if I'm being honest. And last but not least, we have Mothra. Much like Rodan, she's super cool visually. When she shines her god rays, she looks angelic and truly godlike, as well as her imago form looking wonderful in motion. While I do think there are versions of Mothra that are better than this one in terms of how they fly, Monsterverse Mothra is easily up there with some of the best. I also really like Larva Mothra. Her design is really cool and the scene where she comes out of her egg is one of my personal favorites in the movie. With that said, I think Mothra could have done more in the movie, at least when it comes to the combat. It just feels kind of weird to see a monster who is promoted as the redesign made to fight other titans and see her do very little fighting. Aside from a scene between her and Rodan where the latter pins the former onto a building, but she's fine otherwise. She's exactly what you expected, a benevolent monster who helps out Godzilla and is his best friend in the world, and that's fine. So overall, I'd say the King of the Monsters monster cast is pretty awesome, but as for the human cast, they're Alright, starting off we have ourselves the core characters, the Russells, including Madison, Mark, and Emma. Madison is a girl. She's really just there for most of the movie, and she's really there to move things along. Literally, she takes the Titan communicator, the Orca, and moves it to Fenway Park to draw in all the Titans. That's literally the biggest contribution she has to this movie. On the other hand though, Mark Russell's probably my favorite character. He has a lot of charisma and plays off the Monarch people very well, which leads to a lot of good comedy. A lot of people have criticized this character for saying he just walks in and knows everything, but usually the stuff he talks about is animal behavior. And we see earlier in the movie that he studies that sort of stuff, so it's not like he shows up and immediately knows everything. I will say though, it is kind of weird that Mark seems to be the first biologist that Monarch has in its team. Like, you guys study giant animals for a living and you don't have someone who studies animals? But overall, I will say I am very happy with this character. Emma Russell, on the other hand, is not very good. More accurately, her motivations. The point of this character is that she wants to set all the Titans free because we're leading ourselves to our own destruction, and only they can restore this environment and save the world. And she got this grand idea after Godzilla trampled her kid in the events of 2014, which is really counterintuitive if you think about it. It's like getting into a drunk driving accident and then thinking to yourself, maybe if I drink so much that I pass out in the bar, my car wouldn't get damage. That's basically what this is. There's also the point of we're driving ourselves to our own extinction and we need nature to help us out, which I would praise if Godzilla the Planet Eater didn't do this message in a much better way. The message here feels forced, if anything. I feel like it's only there because that's what all the other good Godzilla movies have. Anyways, where was I? Oh right, characters. Dr. Serizawa was fine. I wasn't exactly a big fan of his character in 2014, much like Godzilla, but here, I just thought he was alright. He was a bit more quippy, and I appreciated the injection of slightly more personality into his character, but other than that, he didn't do much for me. I will say though, he does have some really fantastic scenes. One with Mark on a submarine where he talks about the only way to deal with our wounds is to make peace with the demons who created them, which is without a doubt my favorite line in this movie. And of course, his sacrifice is wonderful. And overall, I'm glad he got a semi-good send-off. I just wish they could have done more for this character. As for everyone else, they're fine. Comic relief Sam Coleman and Rick Stanton are funny and likable. Eileen Chen and Alan Jonah didn't really give off much of an impression, but I'm eager to see them in the future, especially considering the former is confirmed to be a Mothra twin. And the military guys are military guys. Overall, I'll say that I think that they're serviceable. They fill the roles they need to fill, and that's basically it. As for any other criticisms, there is one really big one. The Oxygen Destroyer was dumb and bad. It's literally thrown into the fight with Godzilla and Ghidorah in Mexico, and it's only used to get Godzilla out of the plot and nothing else. You think that the most important weapon in the Godzilla series would have a larger presence over the film, but no, it's only brought up once and never again. King Ghidorah would have been a much better use of getting Godzilla out of the plot for a little bit, and it would solve the issue of Ghidorah's power jump. Having Ghidorah beat Godzilla in his own domain would only show that he is a much stronger, more dangerous enemy than anyone could have ever anticipated. Boom! Just killed two birds with one stone. And that's it. Much of what I didn't like was already thrown around during the rest of the review, so it would be kind of stupid to include it again later, and a lot of the other things I'm not a fan of in this movie really come down to little nitpicks that don't really matter in the end. So that concludes this review of Godzilla King of the Monsters, and final thoughts? Godzilla King of the Monsters, while not a perfect Godzilla movie, is certainly a really fun one, and yes, while it does have plenty of issues, it doesn't completely ruin the movie. This movie is really enjoyable, and it's very hard for me not to recommend to people. I'm gonna give Godzilla King of the Monsters an 8 out of 10. While certainly not a top tier movie, I will be sure to revisit it many times in the future. But these are just my thoughts, and I want to know, what did you guys think of Godzilla King of the Monsters? Did you think it was good, trash, or somewhere between? Either way, I am Sam the Giganfan, reminding you all to wash your hands.
Oh no! They say he's got to go, 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 go!